Good day and welcome to Big Bad Tech. I'm your instructor Jim Pytel, and today's topic of discussion are timers executing the off-delay function. Our objective is to introduce the off-delay function and put it to use in some illustrated examples. This lecture operates under the assumption you've watched the Timers on Delay lecture available at the Big Bad Tech channel. The Timers on Delay lecture discusses timers in general, introduces common timing functions, and discusses the on-delay function in some depth. If you haven't watched this lecture yet, or only dimly recall its contents, please take the time, pardon the pun, to do so now. Recall that a timer is a control device that exhibits a time-based shift between the assertion of its controlling input and the activation or deactivation of its associated contacts. Timers can perform numerous functions, including, but not limited to, on-delay, off-delay, on and off delay, the flash, repeat, or recycle function, positive or negative edge-triggered one-shots, cumulative on-delays, and more. Today's lecture deals exclusively with the off-delay function. Before we dive into an in-depth discussion of the off-delay function, allow me to perform a brief walkthrough and review of the other common timing functions. My intention in doing this walkthrough is not to confuse you, but rather to compare and contrast their behavior with one another. Repeated exposure to this topic is the best tactic because similar terms are employed for different functions, and it'd be a horrible mistake to confuse one function for another. Expect me to revisit this exact same walkthrough of common functions every time we have occasion to discuss a new one in depth. Recall that a timing diagram of a timer executing the on-delay or delay-on-energize function would look like this. When the controlling input is energized at this instant here, the associated contacts do not instantaneously switch to their opposite state. The normally closed time open contact remains closed, and the normally open time closed contact remains open. Only after the predetermined delay period T has elapsed do the contacts change states here. The normally closed time open contact opens, and the normally open time closed contact closes. When the controlling input is de-energized here, the associated contacts quasi-instantaneously revert to their normal deactivated state. The normally closed time open contact recloses, and the normally open time closed contact reopens. The on-delay timer could be used to turn another motor on a measurable time period after another has started. Compare this behavior to a timer executing the off-delay function. A timing diagram of a timer executing the off-delay function, sometimes called a delay-on-de-energize, or DODE, would look like this. When the controlling input is energized at this instant here, the associated contacts quasi-instantaneously switch to their opposite state, just like a regular control relay. The normally closed time closed contact opens, and the normally open time open contact closes. However, when the controlling input is de-energized here, the associated contacts maintain the asserted state. The normally closed time closed contact remains open, and the normally open time open contact remains open. Only after the predetermined delay period T has elapsed do the contacts revert to their deactivated state. The normally closed time closed contact recloses, and the normally open time open contact reopens. Note the different terminology and schematic symbols employed by the off delay in comparison to that of the on delay. They're opposite, as one would expect. An off delay could be used to keep one motor running for a measurable period after you turn another one off. Note for this general purpose orientation, I've purposely simplified the timing diagram of an off delay timer. Compare this behavior to a timer executing the on and off delay function. A timing diagram of a timer executing the on and off delay function would look like this. An on and off delay, as the name implies, executes a combination of the on delay and off delay function. When the controlling input is energized at this instant here, the associated contacts do not immediately switch to their opposite state. The normally closed contact remains closed, and the normally open contact remains open. Only after the predetermined delay period T1 has elapsed do the contacts change states here. The normally closed contact opens, and the normally open contact closes. This is the on-delay portion of the on and off delay function. When the controlling input is de-energized at this instant here, the associated contacts do not immediately switch to their opposite state, but rather maintain their activated state. The normally closed contact remains open, and the normally open contact remains closed. Only after the predetermined delay period T2 has elapsed do the contacts revert to their deactivated state. The normally closed contacts reclose, and the normally open contacts reopen. This is the off delay portion of the on and off delay function. A symmetric on and off delay timer means the on delay and off delay time period are equal to each other. T1 equals T2. To set a symmetric on and off delay timer would necessitate only one delay adjustment. In contrast, an asymmetric on and off delay timer means the on delay and off delay are not equal to each other. T1 does not equal T2. Timers executing an asymmetric on and off delay would require two independently adjustable delay periods. An on and off delay timer could be used to coordinate two motors such that motor B stops a period after motor A starts, then motor B stops a period after motor A stops. Note, for this general purpose orientation, I've purposely simplified the timing diagram of the on and off delay timer. Compare this behavior to a timer executing the flash function, sometimes called repeat or recycle. A timing diagram of a timer executing the flash function would look like this. When the controlling input is energized at this instant here, the associated contacts continuously alternate between the activated and deactivated state with a measurable period. Similar to our previous discussion about on and off delay timers, flash function might be symmetric, where the activation period is equal in magnitude to the deactivation period, or asymmetric, where the activation and deactivation periods are independently adjustable. A symmetric flash would necessitate only one adjustment. In contrast, an asymmetric flash would necessitate two adjustment points, one for delay period T1, one for delay period T2. The flash function could be used to create a super annoying warning strobe when a motor is energized, or perhaps timeshare a load between two different motors. Compare this behavior to a timer executing the one-shot function. A timing diagram of a timer executing the one-shot function would look like this. For a positive or rising edge triggered one-shot, when the controlling input is energized at this instant here, the associated contacts only temporarily assume the opposite activated state for a period T, and then revert to their deactivated state, despite the controlling input still being energized. This would be a rising or positive edge triggered one-shot, and essentially does exactly what the name suggests, and that the one-shot function is only enabled once for a period T on a rising or positive going transition of the controlling input. Alternatively, a negative or falling edge triggered one-shot is one that the one-shot function is only enabled once for a period T on a falling or negative going transition of the controlling input. One-shots can be used to assert an output for a desired time period following the energized or de-energized transition of another device. One-shots are particularly interesting because manufacturers occasionally include a slew of handy features, including resets and retriggerable versus non-retriggerable one-shots. Note, for this general purpose orientation, I've purposely simplified the timing diagram for rising and falling edge one-shots. Finally, compare this behavior to a timer executing the cumulative on-delay function. A cumulative on-delay timer is a record-keeping function where the timer does not temporarily shift the outputs, but rather keeps track of how long its controlling input has been energized. Only after the controlling input has been asserted for the predetermined period of time do the outputs respond. Note, despite the controlling input being discontinuously energized, only once the timer has accumulated the required delay period here do the contacts switch to their activated opposite states. Such a timer could be used to keep track of how long a particular controlling input has been asserted, and then alert the system that some maintenance or other task must occur. I like to think of cumulative on-delay timers as little accountants that keep track of how long the controlling input has been asserted and continually monitor how much time remains in the bank before it activates the output. Note, for this general purpose orientation, I've purposely simplified the timing diagram for cumulative on-delay timers. To be sure, there are other timer functions and twisted offspring of unholy unions of these common functions. However, these are more than likely the most common timer functions you'll run across. This orientation is intended to be general in nature and does not dive into specifics nor manufacturer idiosyncrasies. Be aware of subtle differences in different terminology used to describe the same features. Returning to the topic at hand, off-delay timers, sometimes called delay on de-energize timers, you'll recall that a timing diagram of a timer executing the off-delay or delay on de-energize function would look like this. When the timer relay controlling input is energized by pilot voltage, the associated contacts immediately change to their opposite activated states, just like a regular control relay. However, when the controlling input is de-energized here, the associated contacts do not respond immediately, but only do so after a predetermined delay period. The name says it all. Off delay, or delay on de-energize, means that the contacts transition to their opposite states only after a period of delay of the controlling input being de-energized. Such a delayed transition could be used to allow one motor to continue running for a measurable period after another motor is stopped, among numerous other applications, all servicing to coordinate the sequential function of a complicated system. Schematically, timer contacts executing the off-delay function are often illustrated using the switch symbol with an arrow modifier illustrating which action is being delayed. Here's a symbol for a normally closed, time-closed contact, often abbreviated NC-TC. The contact is drawn normally closed. However, the arrow indicates that the reclosure of the contact is delayed a predetermined period beyond the moment the controlling input is de-energized. Here's the symbol for a normally open, timed open contact, often abbreviated NO-TO. The contact is drawn normally open. However, the arrow indicates that the reopening of the contact is delayed a predetermined period beyond the moment the controlling input is de-energized. As helpful and informative as these schematic symbols are, for some reason they've fallen out of favor, and you may just see a contact associated with a timer illustrated as a regular normally closed or normally open contact. The ladder logic documentation should inform a reader that the contacts are executing the off-delay function. Due to the sheer variety of timer functions available, not every function has a handy schematic shorthand equivalent. However, I'll try to make use of these symbols for off-delay contacts since I find them very useful. Note the terminology and schematic symbols for contacts executing the off-delay function are essentially the opposite of those executing the on-delay function, as we'd expect. While this timing diagram illustrates the off-delay function in its simplest form, the truth of the matter is that not all off-delay timers are this simple. Being solid-state devices, the microchip conducting the timing operation often needs to be continuously powered up for it to execute the off-delay function. The internal circuitry of the microchip is responsible for keeping the associated contacts in their opposite state for the required delay period after the controlling input disappears. For this reason, timers executing the off-delay function often necessitate an additional auxiliary controlling input, often illustrated as a coil with three inputs, A1, A2, and either auxiliary, B, or sometimes in. The coil from A1 to A2 must be continually energized for the timer to properly function. The auxiliary controlling input now serves as the initiation signal for the off-delay function, whereas the coil from A1 to A2 serves to simply power the device. A timing diagram of a timer necessitating an auxiliary controlling input executing the off-delay function might look something like this. Given the coil from A1 to A2 is continually powered up, when the auxiliary controlling input is energized at this instant here, the associated contacts immediately switch their opposite states, just like a regular control relay. However, when the auxiliary controlling input is de-energized here, the associated contacts do not respond immediately, but rather only after the predetermined delay period T has elapsed. Note, for the purposes of this general lecture, I'm trying to avoid getting entangled in manufacturer specifics. It is your responsibility to interpret the timing diagram for your particular multifunction timer of interest. Note if a timer necessitating an auxiliary controlling input executing the off-delay function lost power to the coil during the off-delay period, the associated contacts would halt the delay, immediately return to their deactivated state, and reset the timer. This allows an off-delay timer conducting the delay to be overridden by an emergency input for immediate stop purposes. We'll examine this feature in a moment. To set up a multifunction timer to execute the off-delay function, a technician must first choose the correct function and then set the delay period. Here's an example of a multifunction timer with both a two-terminal coil and an additional auxiliary controlling input. A timing diagram of this timer executing the off-delay function looks exactly as I've illustrated. This particular timer can perform 8 different functions, A through H. To set this particular multifunction timer to perform the off-delay function for a period of 5 seconds, a technician will rotate the function selector to function B, the off-delay function as illustrated in the table. Then a technician would choose an appropriate delay. This particular multifunction timer necessitates a two-step process to adjust the delay period. First, select the range and then adjust the range percentage. The range selection presents possibilities from 1 second up to 100 hours. The percentage then can be used to fine-tune the delay period inside this range. For example, 50% of 10 seconds would be a delay of 5 seconds, as would be 5% of 100 seconds. However, 50% of 10 seconds would allow finer tuning around the 5-second region. Note this timer has two indicator LEDs, one that indicates when the device is powered up, and another that indicates when the outputs are in their activated state. Unfortunately, it does not have an LED indicating when the auxiliary controlling input is asserted. This would be a great feature, but sometimes you got to work with the tools you've got at hand. You know you set up the timer correctly if you power up the device, assert the controlling auxiliary input at this moment here, then see the output immediately change states. When the controlling auxiliary input is de-energized at this moment here, the outputs do not instantaneously revert to their deactivated state, but rather maintain the activated state for an additional 5 seconds. After this off-delay period has elapsed, the contacts return to their deactivated state, as we'd expect for an off-delay timer. Troubleshooters take note. A multifunction timer executing the right function at the wrong time needs to have the delay adjusted. In contrast, a multifunction timer executing the wrong function at the right time needs to have the function adjusted. I'd like to say the misinterpretation of functions is a rare occurrence, but it isn't, and you need to be aware of this possibility.